Thank you for coming to today's panel on the OTT services and the effect on the bundled TV model. I'd like to start out by introducing our esteemed panelists. Keith, why don't you start?
I'm Keith Zubchevich. I'm Vice President of Market Development, moving into Chief Strategist role with a company called Conviva, which we're a online or a real-time SaaS control plane company for video customers, for publishers and content operators to give them a real-time touch view and optimization play for their audience.
Christoph?
Christoph Levion. I'm a CTO and Chief Product for AmGo. We're a new streaming service, all devices, all movies. We really focus on the latest movies from the studio, so whatever comes out on DVD, we have it, or a few weeks earlier when possible.
And Chris.
I'm Chris Carey. I run Chief Product Officer for Verizon Digital Media Services. We're a white label, over-the-top digital media supply chain service provider company.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. The way I'd like to start it off is just to give a kind of state of the industry from our panelists. And I thought, Christoph, maybe you can go first and provide a, the topic today is the impact on our bundled TV model, or not ours, Fox, the bundled TV model in general. And from your perspective, I'd like to hear what you think would be just your view of the overall.
It's a great time to be in the OTT business. Actually, I found some stats this morning before coming here. 2009, Nielsen, over 99% of videos were on TVs, like through the standard channels, and that was just 4 years ago. And you take today, you fast forward, on a given Friday night, Netflix is 40% of the traffic on the internet. That's just only over 4 years. So things are changing extremely fast. You have binge watching, you have a plethora of devices coming out about every day, and people owning more and more devices and really getting out of the living room. You have a lot of the young generations actually that doesn't even know what a TV looks like. And that is actually accelerated by the fact that TVs and devices are getting cheaper and cheaper, and you have an effect of people buying their second generation of tablets, for example, and giving the first gen to their kids. And a lot of kids have never turned on a TV. It just happens actually right now, and it's very fast. You have 45% of people under 40 actually are considering not even owning a TV or owning a set-top box. And this is just since 2009. So the industry is changing extremely fast. You have content also now that is only available online. You have Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, and other companies are making their own content, and then you have on top of that companies that just make their own content. You have makers, Machimina, and that is again only since 2009. So it's a very exciting time to be in the OTT business.
Great, thank you. Keith, I'd like to hear your standpoint.
There's actually two data points that are pretty relevant. He mentioned the video consumption being off television, but if you go back to 1960, 7% of homes had cable. Flash forward to now, 98% of all homes buy cable, which means they pay for content. The free television is gone. The second data point is that 5 years ago, less than 5% of the homes had DVR. Today, more than 50% of homes have DVR. So when you think about what that means for OTT, it really drives the consumption patterns that we should all be aware of. So OTT really comes from the fact that, number one, over the last 20, 30 years, people are now willing across the board to pay for content. And second, with DVR, they've developed an appetite to want to watch it when, where, and how they want to watch it. And so OTT is really a continuum of those two data points. And I think that's really where we should look at, learning from where those historical trends are coming from, and then where they're going, and the impact on the OTT side, which I'm sure we'll get into in a little bit more.
Oh, very interesting. Chris, I'd like to hear your perspective.
Sure. I think and you mentioned OTT and the impact on the bundle and television bundling, which indeed came largely as a part of the evolution from broadcast over-the-air distribution to cable and cable operators and the affiliation from national to local broadcasters. To me, I think OTT today and its impact on the bundle is probably, Christoph, you mentioned, Keith, you amplified, the trends are undeniable, that we are moving to a generation culturally, we're moving to a infrastructure technologically whereby internet protocols and network will in fact be the method of carriage and the method of transportation and delivery of video and television programming as we know it. So we've been sitting on, and I don't know, I've probably been saying for 10 years, right on the brink of digital taking over, right? And when is that brink, and really what are the tipping points that are really going to make it move? And I think, you know, we've all said technologically, at least at the conceptual level, pieces have been around for some time. I think a couple of things that really are just now finally moving, and it's really going to change the sort of the content producer's licensing strategy, their content strategy, and therefore bundling, which bundling is nothing other than a licensing strategy. And to me, I think that's a couple of things. One is the advertising model. And we've all talked about it. Really, what drives the entire broadcast ecosystem? Money. Where does the money come from? Advertising. And how does advertising really migrate its spend to the over-the-top services and the platforms that are there? And how does it do it in a way that's really compelling to the consumer, and so that we can, and as a community and as a group and an industry, really move the advertising spend into the over-the-top space. And I think we see now with the emerging platforms, decision platforms, mediation platforms, the migration of a robust advertising ecosystem is now starting to be in play to really move broadcast advertising dollars into the over-the-top space. So that's one that's really going to create the economic model. Another is really the services, and probably a little bit self-serving. A company like ours, Verizon, has stepped into digital media supply and said, we're going to be able to offer a publisher entirely everything they need to move from, I've created my content, now I want to get it managed, published, delivered to consumers, monetized, understood in an intelligent way in a single, easy to use, easy to understand service platform. And we're certainly not the only ones, but it's very much a laser focus of our business. That's one. And then the third thing, which I know my compatriot at the other end of the table will echo in spades, quality. Over-the-top streaming quality still today generally stinks compared to broadcast television. And I mean quality in all the ways you measure it, and not just, gee, can I get a good picture with a good broadband connection at a given moment? Some of the pictures look pretty good at a given moment, but full stop all the time, robustness, utility, reliability, transportability, no matter where I am. And I think that's what we're beginning to see with the heavy infrastructure investments of companies, and then the intelligence that's coming into the management of that, to really create a quality experience for consumers. And I feel like those three things, the economics of the advertising, the quality of the experience, and the ease of deployment of a service, is really going to change a content producer's ability and willingness to move their economic and licensing strategy to an unbundled strategy, where they can actually make as much or more by unbundling than they've ever been able to, sticking with the current model of I got to go sell my four, sort of also ran properties with my top one, because that's where I get all my money from. So that's why I think we're at the real tipping point of having change happen.
Oh, great overview. I appreciate that. Well, you did mention the streaming, and we are at the Streaming Media Conference, so maybe this would be a good time to kick it off with you, Keith. What is the kind of state of the quality of the streams? Not necessarily the content, but the user experience, and I think your company is in a good position to kind of expand on that topic.
Yeah, so Conviva today, just to give you some reference on the context of what I'll talk about, is that we currently manage, see, optimize, view 4 billion streams a month from 1.6 billion devices. That's every month, and that's in 260 countries around the world, every business model, every type of stream, every bit rate. So we have a pretty good view of the state of the internet video space. That said, the OTT play. You really have to, I think, understand what it is you're going to build. Because when you talk about quality, are we talking about quality in a 6:9 PC format? You know, are we talking about, you know, the iPad screen? Is that quality? Because I would tell you then if that's where we want to be and that's our business and that's what we're calling OTT, then as Chris mentioned, quality is still rough. But I would submit that if you put the bar at OTT being the future of television, and you start talking about 56-inch screens and lean-back experiences where you know, you have to be able to broadcast true television quality, and not even SD quality, but HD quality, the market isn't even close. So our view today, you know, we're talking about companies that are streaming 2 megs, and a good 30 to 35% of all internet video is still either completely interrupted by buffering, which means the video actually stops and goes dark or a spinning wheel comes up, or autonomous multi-bitrate edge devices end up dropping bit rates to the point where you can't see numbers on a jersey, or in some cases can't see eyeballs on a face. Now, that's on the small devices. Again, forget about streaming to true television quality. So what's amazing to me and fascinating is that as we talk about OTT businesses and people prioritize technology plays and start to look at their ecosystem, there really is one question that we should ask ourselves as we talk about OTT, and that is OTT a sidecar business that will operate next to television long term, or is it the future of television? And what I would submit is that most of the priorities around quality are going to drive OTT companies into a place where they're not going to inherit television, but get crushed by it. And what I mean by that is there's very little doubt that television is coming onto the internet, as Chris mentioned. It's the infrastructure, the things that people are building out to support true television quality just simply aren't even in place yet. Again, still trying to support the 2+ bit rate streams. And we're talking about a market that's going to need to push 11, 12, 15 at scale, right? That's the future of television. So, you know, the long answer to that question is the quality is marginal today, but it's not even close to having the infrastructure in place to be able to meet the future of television, which, as Chris mentioned, is that the tipping point is coming fast. And at Convivo, that's one of the things in the shameless plug that we consistently try and prioritize with our customers is, you know, don't try and, you know, put these cool bells and whistles into your experience. Try and make it the best video experience you can, and then look to the future and how you can push OTT to becoming the future of television.
Thanks. Chris, back to you, and I'd like to, if you can expand on your point. The quality of the stream obviously is important, as you both are discussing, but also you brought up advertising.
Yeah.
Ads, besides just to match the encoding levels of the video, there's also a lot of add-on or tags or beacons that are trying to get through the pipe as well.
Right.
From your company's standpoint, how are you attacking that, and what do you see out in the industry that may help folks here at the conference?
Well, clearly, you know, kind of building on the conversation earlier, advertising in the over-the-top space, you know, has not only the promise, but the reality of providing extremely targeted, extremely personalized experiences around advertising, and that's going to generate higher yields for advertisers and create a much better and more profitable ad sales program for those over-the-top services. And you know, as we look at it on the supply chain side, again, our focus is to try to, as you mentioned, ensure that the ad is being delivered seamlessly along with the video stream itself. So we're not using the kind of, you know, rudimentary client-side switching that happens today, where we're calling off to an ad service separate from the video streaming service and getting a bit rate, an aspect ratio, a format that's completely different than what the video that you were in the experience watching, but rather more television-like, that the ad is absolutely seamless, but also taking advantage of, you know, not only the technological, but the creative application of bringing in advertising mechanisms that aren't possible in the broadcast environment with pre-rolls, mid-rolls, rollovers, all sorts of different methods by which we can bring advertising closer to the video experience and let, again, a greater traction to the consumer actually watching the ad and reporting against it that's not possible in the broadcast environment. So we continue to look at ways to bring in more integrated components of that to the supply chain so that we can, again, increase the advertising revenue for the publisher and deliver a better, more engaging experience for the consumer and the way that we deliver the advertising.
Great. Christoph, from your standpoint as a technologist and also as a company that does have faces the consumer, how are you attacking that challenge of the quality of the stream to meet like some of the future that we're talking about here today?
So you have technology changes that are actually simplifying a lot of those problems. You have like adaptive streaming now is widely available. We work with Conviva, but there is you have good news actually to temper a little bit the bad news that somehow what you're pushing for is that like bandwidth in the US is growing actually pretty fast. US is now the 8th country in the world for bandwidth. We just broke 7.5 meg average per household. You have a lot of people have access, if not to Fios, we have access to 30 to 60 megs, and yes, it changes the distribution of bandwidth. So you have actually more and more people have access to actually a very clean HD stream on more and more devices, and if the future actually on bandwidth looks pretty bright. You have new technologies coming in, including on the encryption side, like HEVC shrinks the size of files by 50%. That this is today. You will have a likely 60 to 65% drop in volume of data you need to pass for same quality. So while people are talking about that for the future for 4K, that means directly you'll have a beautiful stream in HD at 2 megs, which is actually available for a lot of people. So you have a shift that is happening at the moment, and it's accelerating. The flip side is actually on the devices themselves, like TVs, media players, and all of that have much better hardware than even had 12 to 18 months ago. And so you can push much more transcoding and decoding in the device and correct a lot of the side effects that happen by losses into the transmission. And you can correct on multiple buffer frames. You can correct images and artifacts and defects of the algorithm of encoding. So we're seeing actually very strong HD across the board now, including on mobile, and discussion about 4K, which is actually not around the corner. If everyone's going to be TCS, it's going to be only about 4K. And you will see OTT as the first provider in limited areas, but like 4K will come native first for OTT and not for any other medium.
Oh, very interesting. Thank you. Last year, I think we at CES, 4K was something that we see a lot of, and then about 2 years ago, it was all about 3D TV. I remember every booth you went by, it was Fruit Ninja 3D. I mean, there was all over the place. I'll throw it out to the panel. Do you think the technology will advance to meet the needs of the consumers, or will we have to go with old school technology, like for instance for Verizon, we got to give them better high-speed internet, so that if they unbundle, do we charge them more for high-speed internet, or is it the devices and the at the edge need to get better so that our consumers and all their various devices, or just in the home with the the over-the-top devices in the home, do we need the pipe to be bigger to meet the need, or is it edge services instead of, say, end-to-end? But I don't know if anyone want to tackle that. Sorry for the surprise question, but we're a little ahead of time today.
Sure. I could take a whack at it in terms of the network company perspective on it, although I can never help but have an opinion about 4K. So let me start there.
Yeah.
3D 4K. So 3D, not surprising in the home, it didn't really take off, and probably isn't, because it's a really, really different consumer experience. Glasses, and until we get to auto stereoscopic with the kind of quality that would really be compelling, it's just not fundamentally going to be that interesting. 4K, on the other hand, folks have asked the question a lot, well, is 4K like 3D? Is it going to be another, whiz bang, and then a year from now we'll all go, it didn't really take off. Not so much, because it doesn't really require the consumer to do anything different. What it does require is it requires the infrastructure providers and the application developers and the technology providers in the ecosystem to continue to do what we are likely to do in any case, which is evolve, improve performance, improve bandwidth, improve capabilities. And so 4K is likely to come in sort of due course as a natural evolution and progression from standard def to high definition and to 4K. I don't know that we'll see a huge consumer draw for it for quite some time until, again, you know, I did a bunch of work on this back in the digital cinema days, and unless the screen's, you know, at least that big or bigger and you're sitting in front of that front row, you can't really tell the difference between 4K and 2K, all the other things being precisely equal. So that's where I think 4K goes, but that's one of the statements then that leads to really the next question you asked, which is what do we really need? Infrastructure or sophistication in the application and in the edge and in the content distribution? And I think the answer is yes, right, to all of the above. So now clearly we as a network company at the basis of it, and you know, some years ago, not a ton, but a short number of years ago, Lowell McAdam took over as the CEO of the company, and he's been really clear about saying our network is vitally important, and video is absolutely the killer app that runs on our network. And so getting into providing services on top of our network to offer high-quality video distribution is critical to the company's future, and generally speaking, to the consumer content distribution ecosystem and environment. Broadcast television, satellite transmission are not the future. The future is IP distribution of video to consumers over networks to the home, and doing so in the applications that sit on top of that and the sophistication to be able to offer various different packages, ad-sponsored, subscription, transactional, all that really gets enabled because we get to a common network infrastructure. And then how that's architected, how much of it is big, heavy pipes and backbone, how much of it is distributed using multicast and unicast content distribution and caching technologies and all the various CDN type technologies that move content that's persistently used and or continuously used and persistently can be stored. Those things are going to happen over time. We certainly are deeply involved in how to continue to manage what needs to get held singularly and what can get held in a more distributed fashion to help improve network performance. So I think you're going to see, you know, incredible advancements in all of that. And I think at the end of the day, you know, the tipping point to all this kind of goes back to my first commentary. You got to have a single solution provider. Publishers want to entertain. They want to worry about the script, the story, the engagement, the experience of the consumer. And the more we in the platform provider space, all the three of us sitting up here, kind of come and congeal into a single really simple proposition for a content producer, a publisher, I'll call them for the context of today, the easier it is for them to begin to exploit new businesses, and that's what's really going to make this market take off. It's certainly our focus.
I totally agree with that. I think to wrap both of their comments, I think the misconception of publishers is that, as Christoph was saying, that, you know, having high-speed internet to the home and then having capacity in the network clears buffering, and that's just simply not the case. There are so many links and connections and peering connections and linkages between my home and a source of a video clip that you hit congestion points or you hit things that you have problems with somewhere out in the network, that there could be a ton of capacity to my home. But the fact is, between me and the publisher, it's fraught with variability and risk. And that's the point that Chris is making, is that the solution is that today, rather than cobbling together delivery solutions, to really turn that over to the people that know best, the people that can run a true complete delivery system, and then make sure that return content companies back to producing great content. Now, that said, I'll put, you know, our spin on that is that You know, Chris mentioned it's going to move to IP, but we all know IP was not built for video. It's just fundamentally not a protocol built for video. It just happens to be the one that will succeed. So the only way that you can run things like video on protocols and networks that are as variable and volatile as an IP network is to have one central control plane that virtualizes all of those resources and maximizes every viewer's experience. Because it's not like television where you publish to a head end and everybody watches the same program at the same time. I could be watching the same exact program my son is in my own house, but start the video 2 seconds different. I've now created 2 completely different source streams on the internet. It's that sort of unpredictability coupled with IP's variability that require a new approach to how you construct delivery vehicles. And that's where, you know, I agree with Chris. People like Verizon coming into the space and saying, you know, let me take that. I'm an expert at that. And returning content companies to creating and publishing great content.
And so, like, the question is about the bundle and unbundling. I think, like, people look at that because it's very expensive, right? Like, you have to spend $100 to get access to 200 channels, and, you know, out of the financial crisis, it's a problem for a lot of people. So today you can get a Netflix account plus a Vudu account or a MGO account, and you can spend a few dozens of dollars, and that's good. But what seems that's going to happen also is that to balance that, you're going to have this massive infrastructure that will have to be built across the board, and that will mean new costs that at some point may come to the consumers. And since your question is around quality, you may end up possibly with a die-in for users depending on what they want to do, and like, I want more quality and I want less quality, and pay on demand for different types of qualities. It is a possible future, looking at the billions of dollars that have to be brought across the board just to be able to support this giant volume that is coming at the moment.
Great. So that's a good segue into the last part of what we talked about before was the customer. So the bundle TV model, they're the ones who are facing these large bills. But you know, you three also we're your customers, pay TV providers. You know, you're an MVPD as well, and you have other clients that may use parts of your end-to-end system. Chris, let me kick it over to you. If you unbundle the model for, you know, you don't want 300 channels, you want less.
Right.
But as the quality of the stream is so important, you have to pay more than for an old school or low-tech solution of being a bigger pipe to a high-tech question of I want the channels I want the great quality, TV quality when I turn on my over-the-top device. How do you juggle the needs of all your clients, both B2B and B2C?
Sure. Well, yeah, so customers are customers and customers are consumers, right? So the Verizon company, certainly we've got, you know, our MVPD business, we've got our wireless business, which has branded experiences that are consumer facing. And then we, as the sort of supply chain engine behind that, look at those businesses as internally our own customer, as well as then companies like MGO and other publishers out there in the market that need supply chain services, and we can provide them to those individuals. When it comes to, you know, us as a content licensee and distributor in our FiOS business, for example, as a classic case, you know, we're constantly looking at how can we continue to improve the consumer experience to gain value out of what we're offering them. You know, our My Mobility application today, which has got, if you're a FiOS consumer, 90-some channels streamed to your in-home over-the-top application today, and a half a dozen or so that can be streamed to your device no matter where you have a broadband connection. And really, why is that? The only reason there's only 6 out of home is rights. And as we continue to pursue that and get from 6 to 12 to 15, we're beginning to move some of the needle around content licensing strategies and what really is the rights licensing strategies that the content producers are ultimately going to move towards. And it's I guess it's really a virtuous cycle, and we're all sort of two halves of a whole. We all have a part to play in this as publishers, as MVPDs, as content providers, and as infrastructure players to help continuing to refine and improve the value proposition that ultimately makes consumers experience better, ultimately, engagement and entertainment. I don't think, and I know we talk a lot about this at Verizon, it's not about how much more money can we extract out of an individual consumer. How can we get their bill from $120 to $170 to whatever it might be monthly. It's how can we make the value of that increasingly greater. And again, I do feel as though today we are at this tipping point between broadcast dollars and OTT dollars, or dimes, as we used to call it, pennies, and I think we can at least call it dimes now. There is a very important transition that can happen very soon, and we'll play a part in that to say, you know what, we can put together different packages that for the publisher increase the value to them through the advertising sponsored models that we have, through the licensing deals that we're willing to do, and then offer that into a bundle or a package. You know, unbundling is really, what is a bundle anyway? It's a bunch of sticks with some twine around it. You can pull it all apart and put it together in different packages, right? I think there'll always be bundles. I think what we talk about bundling and how do we unbundle. What we really mean is customized bundles. I know I don't really actually want to have individual accounts for every branded TV program I want to be able to go in and customize my bundle. I like these 5 major networks. I like this sports. I like this lifestyle. I like this. I want to build that package, and I'm willing to pay whatever that price is. And I think that's what we're coming to be able to provide. What doesn't have to feel like we're just extracting more money out of the consumer. I think all of this will happen actually by improving the infrastructure, the sophistication of the applications, and the way we deal with distribution strategies, and the quality of the content, so that, in fact, total dollars for the players in the ecosystem continue to be good and healthy, and the value to the consumer continues to increase. So we're not really just saying somebody wins and somebody loses. We can all win as we move the paradigm from where it is today to the future.
Great, great, excellent. So Christoph, it sounds like he was also describing packages that your company is providing today. How do you see this moving forward?
So actually, I liked what you mentioned about like 15, 20 years ago, the DVR enabled people to start to think about when I want to see something. And you mentioned about customization, and all of this is the same evolution where you have now capabilities through like IP services. It's very easy to customize. Like there's no hardware involved. It works on any device. So in my company, but also across the board, I see people really focusing on building an application where customers can choose. And it chooses everything. Could be choosing the price, could be choosing the selection, could be when, what, how, recommendation engines, multiple profiles where every member of the family can have a different experience. Like all those things come together mostly through software. And I think that the reason OTT at the end will win is because it's very simple or fast to make prototypes. It's easy to test a new program, to test new bundles, test new features, test new capabilities. You don't have to make a big investment to try new things. And that's what we've seen in the internet for 20 years on the web. Like things are changing very fast, and it's just now like people talk about the internet everywhere, and it's just the continuation of that, and it's very important because developers have an ability to, again, through software, to make changes very fast. So you have a lot of even ideas that are now being talked about that even a year ago people would not think about it. So that's what I'm on my side what we're doing as a head of product. Like you can look really at simplification, but not by removing features, but by making them transparent for users. And again, the example for me is like recently, like large services bringing multiple profiles. If you have a 7-year-old looking at content on a tablet, the interface, the experience, the content, even likely the model, you likely don't want to show ads as much as you want to do to someone else. And all that is actually customized. You can customize business models, deliveries, interfaces.
Oh, thanks. And Keith, I want to end this question or this topic with you, or the subtopic on, from your standpoint, from a strategic view, I mean, how do we navigate us as an industry this, the need to meet all the requirements of our customers, whether on the business side or the consumer side, and produce a quality product, and for value. And there's always an and value, and quality, and within the rights of our partners and content license agreements. What's your take on that side?
So, again, at a fundamental layer, I think what is it we're building towards? And again, I passionately believe, as I think all of us do in here, that the OTT model is the television of the future. So that's the first thing, is that can you build a true television distribution model on the internet at scale to TV lean-back, large screen experiences? That is first and foremost. Then the secondary question to that is the monetization play. As Conviva, I think, as a small company in what is a very rapidly growing and rapidly successful evolving market, it's really about how do we figure out how to tie ourselves to the right value. And as a company, we've always thought of ourselves as a company that gets viewers to watch more. And we've always talked about views, and we've always talked about viewer minutes, and we always talk about how many streams, per unique. But what is happening, I think, and if you look back, and again, if you don't learn, you can always learn from the past and figure out where you need to go in the future, and it's all about trends, is that we started to look at the evolution of the market, and one of the key things in the market for all of us, right, not for me, for Verizon, for MGO, for everyone here that's looking at building out their own OTT model, is what's the right model? So again, at a fundamental hardware layer, can I build at scale a large television network? First question. Second one is, how do I monetize it? If you look at the trends in the market, and you can throw out a million different data points, things like I talked about the DVR model evolving, right? 50% of homes, 50% of homes have a DVR capability. It's the fastest growing, by the way, of TV consumption, video consumption. The fastest growing across all demos is DVR viewed television, which means it's already happening in every demo. People are watching content when and how they want to watch it. The question then becomes do you take the ad model into the new television, the OTT space? Or do you change the model? The great thing about where we sit today is we're at this point of inflection where television is going to go from the old analog head-end model to this new IP flexible global DVR delivery model, right? So the question is, we got to get it right. You got to get the OTT model right, because I believe that, Jeff Zucker used the comment, are we trading analog dollars for digital pennies? By the way, he's at CNN now, and he's upgraded, so now it's analog dollars for digital quarters.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he's upgraded, yeah, so it's obviously more profitable. But I think what is inherent in that one statement is, do we fundamentally believe that television in its model today is just going to uproot and move to a new protocol? Our belief at Conviva is what we see in viewer consumption patterns is that people are willing to pay for content. And the great thing about what we're building in the OTT space is, as Christoph said, is really the simplicity, is that I now have access, rapid and flexible access to only what I want to watch. And what we're seeing is human behavior will even pay for it. And there's 2 points I want to make on this, is that you look at traditional media, and I'll give you 2 examples, HBO and CBS, 2 very successful media companies on television today. HBO plays no ads, right? They're a subscription-only service. From 2007 to 2010, they lost almost 1 million subscribers in the economic situation that we had after the housing bubble. They grew revenue every year while losing almost 1 million subscribers. How they did it was they just charged more for content, and people were willing to pay for it. The other data point is CBS, which is now totally ad-funded. They don't charge for content. CBS's ad spend has increased 4% quarter to quarter over the last year, but as a relation to their total revenues has fallen from 61% down to 51% in 3 quarters. What that means is even an ad-supported media company is starting to hedge their bet and start to charge for content licensing deals and carriage deals. So as we talk about OTT and we talk about the technical aspects of building a robust, global, scalable, high-quality OTT service, the most important thing that we have to come to conclusions now on is then what is that effective business model? And again, if you look at television today, I think that, not that I would ever argue that ads television is dying or that advertising is dying. I would never say that. But I think from the standpoint of how to construct successful OTT businesses, I would only caution that there's probably a healthy appetite for a pay-per-view model in the future market as opposed to ad subscription, so, or ad supported.
Can I throw a counterpoint in there?
Absolutely.
So, don't you think, though, and none of us are necessarily advertisers or creative agencies producing advertising, but I think we've all probably said, as I do, I'll actually wait 15 minutes to start a program that's airing at 9 o'clock, just so I can skip the commercials, admit it. Why do I do that? Well, because they're not really presented in a way that's interesting or engaging to me. I don't care about the ads because probably half of them don't really suit my demographic and my personality and my needs and desires and wants. Once we can effectively produce creative that works for the OTT landscape and is customized because we know who the family is, potentially who the consumer is, if it's an individual device and a subscription or a otherwise profile that we can know it's your daughter or your son or yourself that's watching it, we can really change so that the advertising becomes interesting. If I knew I was going to be able to watch a lot of stuff I'm interested in, I might be a lot more patient to look through that ad or then throw the creative on top of it, of everything we can do inside of the video and on top of the video to really exploit the creative side of ad delivery in an OTT model. I'd counterpoint, there is still, in fact, upside to the advertising ecosystem.
Yeah, and a good point there is that if you go on YouTube, you have a button to skip, right? Like they give that option for people, and actually they have a very good percentage of ads that are being watched because they're the right ad at the right moment. They're very short, and it worked pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
who knows how it pans out?
Absolutely. Again, one of the questions I always ask is, we could probably do a show of hands in this room of how many people love watching content, and everyone would raise their hand. How many people love watching commercials? And I think across the board, everybody would say, I don't watch commercials. And again, I don't think that, television, by the way.
I like watching the new Porsche commercial. It's the Carrera S, that thing's hot.
So, it's not the fact
just me.
that the ad market will go under. I just think it's a new way. And I think as we build OTT, my only point in this is that, I think that the reason that if you think about where advertising came from and commercials came from, it came from a captive audience on television.
Right.
The only reason we're even conditioned today to even accept a commercial break was because that's just how we always did it. But again, this is a new point in time where if you look at the value of content, and again, the benefit of what we can build as an OTT market is that we can now leverage the real asset, which is the content. In past television models, it was unable to do that. And the reason why they had to bring in commercials was so that they could fund the content. When you look at companies like HBO and you look at cable carriers that don't have one ad play on their entire network, and their revenues are increasing constantly. And again, the point being that I think that if you're going to look at evolving the technology and evolving this new business to get the business model right and look for new ways to advertise, because Chris is absolutely right. Maybe it's about banner ads, maybe it's product placement. That's a huge uptrend. Maybe there's other ways that content companies can leverage that spend. It's still the largest marketing spend in the world. Television advertising is the largest marketing spend in the world. Right. That money cannot go away. It's just that as consumers, I'm willing to pay. So maybe I want to throw my hat into this economic game.
And you see hybrid models, again, where choice is in the hands of consumers. You can go on Hulu and you can watch some of the content equally with ads or with less ads, right? It's a choice. It's a choice based on how much time you have. It's a choice based on your bank account. It's a choice based on likely which device you're on. But it's a choice, again, that gets to the consumer and is not made in advance for you.
Yeah.
This is a great topic.
Yeah, fantastic, guys. Before we go to Q&A with the audience, let me ask you guys a bonus question. Pop quiz. So I'm hearing a lot, and some of the advertising guy in me and the pay TV guy, I'm staggering up here, but no, I love the opinions you guys are putting forth. But let me ask you guys, and I didn't email you beforehand, and Keith, we're going to start with you, since you're closest. A year from now, is OTT, the acronym, the industry exist, or does it fold into a new name, a new, something that transforms? It's already been disruptive. It's already being proven it works. But what is it over the top of a year from now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we struggle with that as a company, because trying to label what it is we do in our space, I don't think there's a definite answer for what you should call it. I think everybody, to use maybe a semi-inappropriate analogy, it's like when they were trying to define porn in the Senate. I don't know exactly what it is, but I'll tell you when I see it. Right? That's how we define our own industry today. It's hard to define, and therefore it's hard to label. So, but again, I think the evolution in a very rapid period of time with some of the work Chris is doing at Verizon is going to change the dynamics of the entire business. And I don't mean to be grandiose or hyperbolic, but I really believe that when the business arrangements and the partnerships and what we're building change, then we'll be able to better label it. Because today, it still really is 6x9 on a PC, on an iPad, on an iPhone, but that's not what we need to label. What we need to label is when we are in that Blade Runner type format where we have, you know, a home where it's a 56-inch television and you can touch the screen and bring up a program, click it, and it starts to play. Right? That's where we're going. We're far from that right now, but you know, online television, OTT works for me.
Okay, so Christoph, what do you think? What's going to happen in a year with the space, and is it still called OTT?
So, and the other name that you have sometimes is TV everywhere, but like TV has a lot of baggage. Like you expect that you have shows that last for 30 minutes to an hour, split in the middle of advertising, and you have channels that you go from one to another. If I watch 12 hours in a row of machining my content on my phone, it is not TV everywhere. It is new. Like it is a new media. It is produced by people outside of the studios. It is distributed by a new network on new devices in a new business model. So OTT has a nice global acronym. I don't know if it stays, but I like the openness that comes with it, because it's exactly what we're talking about. Like I don't know what's coming in a year or two, but it's very different from, it is not transposing what you have now on the web. I don't think that's what it is.
And Chris, I'd like to hear from you. You seem to have some pretty good forward-thinking ideas on this. What do you think it looks like a year from now?
So OTT is a phrase I don't know, in the sort of tech community came up with to try and describe it. And I guess the one thing I want to do is put a marker out there that everything's going to be over the top. So therefore, how is that any longer a differentiator of what that is? And even talking about, the cable operators in the room, we certainly got a pretty big operation ourselves. The next generation of our closed system is over the top. It's really the application stack that's going to make it different. And it's the bundle and the package that we put on top of it, the infrastructure we're building for the next generation of cable head-end and distribution is over-the-top distribution using content delivery network technologies, multicast technologies, IP protocols for managing and distributing and caching video. So everything is becoming over the top because that was originally described as free from the shackles of the formerly known as fully owned gatekeeper pipes that were these MSOs that existed around the digital landscape as we moved through the 80s, 90s, and the end of the last decade. So I think what we're going to start finding is branded platforms that conjure up concepts like mobility, everywhere is one of them, TV, but everywhere. Fios, we call Fios mobility. Why isn't that? Why aren't those kinds of brands? Really what's going to emerge is when you think of Netflix, I mean, you can get it. It all is over the top, but you can get it on your TV set over an application, whether it's a widget on that TV set or a set-top box or what have you. So I think OTT as a differentiator will have to start in the dialogue and the sort of the discourse that we have in these communities to start talking about, well, we got to find a way to better describe what differentiates a mobile and mobility application to that which we formerly kind of defined as the difference between, what's Fios UTT and OTT? Really not that different anymore. And I use that as one example. So I imagine the branded platforms sort of take over, and concepts like everywhere and mobile and branded platforms take over, and the OTT acronym sort of starts to fade away.
Well, you all passed the pop quiz. You guys gave great answers. Let's go to some Q&A here. Anyone in the audience have any questions for our panelists? Oh, right to you.
I just have a quick question about the premise of people willing to pay for content. Do we think that a lot of their our thoughts that they're willing to pay for content is sort of hidden by the fact that they pay these large sums of money to an MSO? They don't really understand what they're paying for each. I work in the cable industry, and so I even have heard some rumblings, you know about the CBS and Time Warner thing that went down a little bit. There's some rumblings about them even putting the breakouts onto customers' bills. Here's what the retrans fee is for CBS. So, Christoph mentioned the thing about people paying more for no ads and stuff like that. They're not really paying more for content. They're paying more for their time, paying more because their time is valuable. I'm not necessarily saying that people won't pay. I think HBO is one of those ultra premium brands. Yes, I think that is purely evidenced in those numbers. People will pay more for that, but that's one. And just to kind of segue into a second question I had is about something I just forgot. So go ahead. I'll hopefully think about the second part.
I'll take first shot. First and foremost, that actually is a great point, because people tend to write their cable bill every month, and they write pretty decent checks. I know I'm a DirecTV customer, and I write a decent check to DirecTV, but I really only watch a finite number of titles on a given month. So if you think about it in that way, I may pay for a service of 1,000 shows, but I may only watch 10. Right? And so if I took my $100 a month, and people vary from $20 a month all the way up to $1,000 a month in what they pay for television or cable bills, and then you divide that up by the number of programs you actually really even watch, you'd find really quickly that the pay-per-view title is actually probably pretty profitable. It's just that there's so much content, 308, actually there's now 800 channels on DirecTV. I don't watch 800 channels, I watch like 5. But again, if you think about, people are already conditioned to pay for content. They just think they're paying for a service, but they watch very little.
So I actually did think of my second part. And so if this unbundling thing happens, are the programmers in your minds, and for those of you who are programmers, are they ready for the perhaps shock that some of their networks won't survive without being subsidized by the bundling? There may be very few, their viewership of some networks may be much smaller than they think, and when they're not able to bundle those with the larger package that media conglomerate offers, do you guys think, maybe my premise is wrong, do you guys think that some networks can't survive, and if true they can't survive, are the programmers sort of prepared for that, or are they scared, which is the resistance to the unbundling?
So I'll take a whack at, there's a lot of people that spend a lot of time and a lot of intellectual capital figuring out whether that carriage fee is worth it or not, right? Whether it's HGTV or Spike or History or you name it, all the way down the list of the channels that you might question, well, gee, how many people are really buying it? I'm pretty sure there's actually an equilibrium where that channel, that lifestyle channel, that's the category where there's probably, the bubble exists, there are people who want that lifestyle channel and are likely to spend, the price to get it that's going to be equivalent to what they're getting in this aggregated carriage deal across, an entire subscriber base. It's a scary ledge to jump off of on both sides of the equation, why I said I really feel like we all kind of have to go as partners together to that new model and unbundling and direct sales and direct pricing structures. But when we get there, I think it's a win for everybody, because that lifestyle channel or that niche interest channel is actually going to find its market, probably do a better job of programming to that market because it now can speak to them much more directly. And I think evidence of that are the pure play internet channels like Maker and Machinima and others who have really become very successful because they know exactly what their consumer wants, more so perhaps than that disintermediated distribution model that exists today.
Yeah, in the long run, I think it's much better. You have, like right now, you don't have market effects happening, right? So Like in my business, we sell movies, and great movies do well, and not so good movies don't do so well. It's Darwin, right? Right now, we don't have that effect right now. So yes, there may be some hurting early on, but again, I think ultimately, like when you have content creators and consumers really have the ability to find each other openly, ultimately great content wins, like Game of Thrones, House of Cards, you name it, like, and one is on HBO, one is on Netflix, right? So great content, I mean, like at the cooler, in any office, what do people talk the next day? The Walking Dead. They talk about great content. And I think the bundling is hiding or allowing some not so good content to possibly to survive, and because of that also it prevents some people with great content for having a shot. So when you unbundle and through OTT, like great content finds a niche if it's small and find huge audience if it's big. And so I'm very positive in the long run for both the content producers and for consumers.
I think the over-the-top play is even good for the networks. And the reason why I say that is because today, one of the biggest burdens on being a network is airtime. So if you think about how many shows they have to put out just to fill that linear channel for 24 hours a day, for 7 days a week, 365 days a year, there's a lot of cost with filling time. They have to put shows up, and half of them aren't any good. But if you can move to an OTT model where you take off the live linear channel, and now all of a sudden I'm about titles, and as he was mentioning, Walking Dead, you know, Breaking Bad, all those great titles, I don't have to fill 12 hours of airtime. I have to put out good series. And so I think ultimately one of the biggest changes will be the burden removed from the networks of having to fill airtime with very expensive manufactured content or licensed content. They don't have to do that anymore. And it'll move to an equilibrium where they'll be able to go after profitable content, not necessarily airtime content.
Any other questions? Oh, we have one over here. You mind sharing that?
Hi. We've heard before this idea that that channels are going to become apps. As we unbundle, that, you know, what was a channel is now an app on my OTT device, my tablet, whatever. And I'm a mobile developer. We have a younger generation coming up for whom piracy is absolutely normalized. Everyone is setting up proxy servers to block ads. They're pirating our apps. You know, we have games. Everyone jailbreaks their iPhones, or they just use Android, which is jailbroken by default. And you see games that are like 95% of the users are pirated. As this generation for whom piracy is normal starts moving into OTT and you become their target, what future is there for you guys when you have so many people who are so determined to not pay for stuff?
Actually, I'll get a shot on this one because I found some metrics again this morning. Actually, piracy in the United States has been going down the last few years, and specifically, like less than 10% of US traffic on the internet is now piracy. At peak, it was over 20%. Like $9 you can get a month of subscription on Netflix, and that is destroying piracy right now. If you want a great new movie, you can get Man of Steel for $3.99 or $4.99. Like, why bother? Like, it's going to take you hours and hours to actually go to a BitTorrent and download a movie. So actually, OTT is actually decreasing the piracy at the moment pretty fast.
Yeah, I want to add to that spent a fair bit of my life in the film studio business. It was a huge threat in the late 90s and early 2000s. We did a big campaign fighting it, et cetera, and one of the things that was very, very clear to us, and tests have proven, and in fact the trends Christophe mentioned are bearing fruit to the theory we had, the best defense is a very strong offense. And I mean that from a publisher point of view, a content producer point of view. The best way to avoid piracy is get the product into people's hands in the way they want it, at the price they want it, in a compelling way, and you will continue to reduce the sort of the need for the mainstream to want to steal. You always need to have content protection and security technologies in place, so I'm not suggesting we're going to go away and unencrypted files will be freely flowing from content publishing companies like ours or content producers that sit behind us and trust us to deliver it. We'll do the right thing to secure it in a reasonably safe manner, as I like to have always called the content security. They're curbs to keep law-abiding people on the road. You'll never build a brick wall high enough to keep thieves from stealing. It's simply not realistic goal to have, but you want the curb high enough and hard enough and the availability ready enough and compelling enough that it's just easier to acquire the content at the right price. So I feel like that's still the case, and I certainly speak from film and television, having a lot of very personal, direct experience and knowledge about it. When you talk about applications and gaming space, I know there are different levers that move the dynamic of that culture, and perhaps there's insights others of my colleagues might have on that, but certainly in the filmed entertainment, television entertainment, I think there's a right strategy to do, as I said, offense plus defense plus offense.
All right, everyone, we are up on our time. Keith, Chris, Christoph, thank you very much. How about a little hand of applause for our panelists today?